Ready as all?
Real quick before I come up here, what we're using to advance this whole thing here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry.
I thought that was a good idea to come ask before.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 21st, 2019 Council Committee meeting. My name is Stephanie Meyer, Council President and a council member from Ward 3, and I will be chairing this meeting. Besides myself, the committee members here tonight are Matt Zimmerman, Ward 1, Jim Neighbor, Ward 1, Eric Jenkins, Ward 2, Mike Kemling, Ward 2, Lisa Larson-Bonnell, Ward 3, Mickey Sandifer, Ward 4, and Lindsay Constance, Ward 4. Before we begin our agenda, I'd like to explain our procedures for public input. During the meeting, I will offer the opportunity for public input. If you would like to speak to the committee at any of those times, please go to the podium, and I will ask that you state your name and address for the record, and then you may offer your comments. So the members of the audience can hear you, I would ask that you speak directly into the microphone. By policy, comments are limited to 5 minutes. After you are finished, please sign the form on the podium to ensure we have an accurate record of your name and address. The only item on tonight's agenda is our second discussion of the 2019-R2020 budget. Tonight, we'll cover the functional budget, future service goals, forecast highlights, budget highlights, and the city's work plan. City Manager Sunderman will start us off, and this item is for informational purposes only. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Welcome to episode 2 of kind of our budget presentation. Tonight will be a little bit more in depth, as you'll see presentations from the departments. Also like once again to thank Maureen and Shelley, the finance department, for all their hard work to prepare the budget, as well as you'll see input from our entire city staff, not just the management team, but a lot of other folks throughout the department. So I really just want to kick this off. Like I said, tonight will be a little bit longer, but encourage questions, comments, feedback as we walk through the presentation. And we're here to answer any questions or help you guys along the way as we can kind of come to a conclusion. And then as we'll talk about at the very end, our next budget meeting will then be June 4th, which will be kind of the Visit Shawnee in the chamber presentation. So thank you.
Good evening, Maureen Rogers, Finance Director. And as we have done for the last few years, we're starting with the big picture and then drilling down a little bit farther. Start with the revenues, and we're presenting by function, which we put all the funds together rather than presenting by fund. It's all the funds put together. So it's a little bit different picture than just looking at the general fund, as we'll see. There's a little bit different dynamics. Revenues went up about $4 million, or 4%, a little over $3 million from 19R to 20. Most of that is all in the tax side, property and sales taxes. The permits and fines are really pretty flat. The 88% of our revenues are tax sources, with the largest being sales tax at 38%, and close seconds, property tax at 35%, and then other taxes, the franchise, highway, liquor, transient guests, 15%, and then there's an 11% that is those permits, licenses, fines. Total revenues about $84 million without transfers. Okay, on the expenditure side, there's a little bit more going on in this slide. Really, the kind of the story, I guess, if you will, for this budget is that we ended 2018 with a good reserves, a good year, and to a good place to start for this budget. In 2019 and 2019R, there's quite a bit going on, as well as in 20 on the functional budget. We'll look more at projects, because since it includes all the funds, there are some funds that are they have fund balances, but they're not really part of our reserves. We're saving up for future projects, and so they go up and down a little bit more than what the general fund would do. Looking at public safety, I know we key in on those percentages of the functions, and looking at whether or not the budget supports what the council considers to be the most important results. In 19, we have in public safety a little bit of a bubble where there's quite a bit going on. The percentages, the public safety percentage for 18 was 36% of the total budget, and then it went up to 40 in budget 19 and 38 in revised. There's in 19 there were 2 additional police officers added. Also technology upgrades throughout the city, quite a bit in public safety. Also, one thing that is kind of significant this year is about 30 years ago, there were a number of police officers and firefighters hired as the city grew, and now they're ready to retire. And so that all the costs associated with that and the turnover are kind of a bubble in 19R. There's some in 20, but that begins to wane in the future years of the forecast. So then the public safety percentage, 37%, kind of comes back down closer to what it was in 18. In the street maintenance program, we were high in 18 because of the cash funding the SIP street of the street improvement program, the SIP, for Flint. And then there is not a SIP project we're saving up in 19. And then in 20, there's another SIP project, 60th Street from Flint to Neiman. And so that kind of goes up and down a little bit. Parks and Rec has a kind of a jump in 20, mainly because of the $4 million development of the park out at 55th and Belmont. So we've been saving up in Parks and Pipes for that project. One thing that happens every year that kind of creates a bubble in the revised of the current year is in the community and economic development function includes the Economic Development Fund. And normally this is how it has worked in the past, we've budgeted a number of placeholders in the current year for different projects, and some of them carry forward. For instance, eco-commerce, we've been working on that for a number of years. And so since it's not in actual 18, we move it up to the revised of the next year. So that is a pretty big jump there. So I guess some of the kind of characteristic of some of the expenditures, staffing levels, technology upgrades throughout the city, There's some opportunities that we're able to take advantage of. Some of the items that you see are really timing as far as you'll see a little bit later that we have an opportunity to pay off some debt early. So that makes 19R larger, but it's really saving money. Also, we had some fiber build out that was last year. It was budgeted to be debt funded. Now we're able to cash fund it. So not everything that is in revised R is actually an additional expenditure. Some of it is timing. Another opportunity of a different kind. We had a chance to acquire a pristine period house for the Doc Sullivan house, and by moving some money up a little farther that it was in the Special Parks Fund, we're able to take advantage of that opportunity. Another characteristic, I guess, of the story of this budget is planning. We have a number of plans that are in the budget. Some of them were talked about last year, but we have the strategic plan, the park master plan, the comprehensive plan, which is new to the budget this year for 20, business survey, and a study about the facility conservation, that project. So that's just some examples of those. So the expenditure budget altogether for 20 went up about 4% for all the funds together. And this is just the same information in a pie chart format. So this is kind of a condensed version without the detail, starting from beginning fund balance, revenue expenditures, ending fund balances. This is somewhat typical of what this has looked like the last few years. The revised budget shows a deficit of almost $4 million, but $3 million of it is that money moving from in the Economic Development Fund, those placeholders, and all the things we talked about, kind of the bubble that we'll see in the general fund a little bit more. And then there's also a deficit shown in 20 of over 4 million. But when you think about the 4 million that's budgeted for the 55th and Belmont Park, and then also the SIP Street at 60th Street is over $1 million. So some of this is, a fair amount of this is project timing. We have the money, we're spending it in that year. And that's really the high-level functional budget. If you have any questions about this high-level view before, we're going to go on into looking at the funds in here in a minute.
Looks like we're good.
Okay. So we have a number of funds. There are several that are pretty similar to what we showed last year. If there's any of them you have questions about and want to talk about, we would be happy to do that. Otherwise, we won't really have slides on these. A note about the Special Highway Fund. Just a reminder, we're actually halfway through the term of the pavement sales tax because it was approved in 2014. And it sunsets on March 31st, 2025. That forecast is shown as if that tax is not renewed. So if you look out in the future years, the revenue goes down quite a bit. The remaining funds, some of these are not a lot different than last year either, but we wanted to talk a little bit more about them for various reasons. Tonight, we're not going to talk about the transient guest fund or the economic development. We'll save those for when we have Kevin and Ann. Big picture highlights, the total mill levy remains the same as it was last year throughout the entire forecast. For a number of years, we've been shifting mills slowly from the debt service fund. We shifted some over into the public safety equipment. It is okay where it's at right now. We don't need to shift any more to it. And that shifting is slowing down from what it was. And then about halfway through the forecast, it's shown as just, it's level. It's where it needs to be. In the general fund, just a reminder, we've talked about this before, the Johnson County Courthouse sales tax, about 1.6 million in 20. And the way that we've been structuring that, we let $500,000 of that revenue each year flow directly into reserves, so to speak. That came from there was a COPS grant where now that funding from the grant is over. And so for those 5 police officers, we need to be able to fund that. So that was where that idea came from. The remainder, after you take out the $500,000, is the project. We move it to a project, and you all have indicated that you are interested in using that for public safety. 2020 budget expenditures in the general fund are 2.6 over the 2019 budget. That's actually a pretty small increase compared to some that we've had, and that's kind of this idea that there's some areas where the budget really didn't go up much at all from 19R to 20 due to some of the factors that made 19R larger. And we talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago, 2018. We'll go on to the next slide. This year I picked up the revised 18 column at the beginning to kind of show you we had budgeted a 2.4 million deficit, but what we actually came in was about a 880,000 surplus. And we talked about how we ended the year, but that's just visually what that looks like. We can't promise that that will always be the case. It fluctuates from year to year, but that's what that looked like. In 19, there's a 4.4 million deficit due to a number of the reasons that I talked about. There's you see several departments that are larger in 19, and then they really don't show much growth at all in 20. And there was an increase from budget 19 to revised 19 for some of those reasons. And then the expenditures for budget 20 are actually less than they were overall for 19. Ending fund balance for budget 20 is 31%, revised 19 is 36%. You can see those numbers are a little bit lower than what they were for their respective columns in 18, but they definitely, it meets the reserve target in our policy of greater than 30%. And the forecast, and this is what it pretty much looks like every year, it tapers down toward the end of the 10 years. And that's that idea that it's as we don't spend everything in our budget. And so it hopefully fills back up. And then it has to be watched every year and to see how the economy is doing and where we're at on all of those things. But this is a pretty typical pattern. And this is the only one of these forecasts with all these numbers that we're going to look at tonight. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, the public safety equipment. This fund is now self-sustaining at 1.3 mils. Fire trucks, we mentioned this last year, but we've tweaked it a little bit since then, that we still need to debt fund some trucks in the next few years, and then there's still a possibility of being able to cash fund. That kind of, sometimes the trucks get a little more expensive than they were the year before when we start forecasting them. But we did, this is another example of how we moved some money up sooner in order to save money. We had the next truck next year. Last year we showed it as a 4-year short-term, a temporary note, and we are looking at compressing that to 2 years, which will save interest. So that is another one of those timing things. The Parks and Pipes Fund, it sunsets at the end of 2025, and that forecast is also shown as if it's not renewed. On the park side, we've mentioned the 55th and Belmont. Another project that I don't believe was in the budget last year is park restroom improvements in 2021 at Gum Springs, Swarner, and Herman Laird. And then on the pipe side, a couple years ago when the decision was made to bond for the Neiman Now projects, that pretty much programmed out the pipe side with debt payments. As we've done better on the getting more SMACs, some of that has been this fund has actually been able to absorb more of those payments. And when we first talked about it, we were having to use the economic development and the debt service. There's very little of that left, and this fund is actually absorbing most all of that. And there was room for a city match for the 67th and Cottonwood SMAC project in 2021 as well. Stormwater Utility Fund is really not any different than last year. We just want to keep it kind of highlighted. It averages about 1.6 million annually for pipe repairs. That does go down over the years because there's staff being paid out of the stormwater fund, and as that goes up, the amount for pipe repairs goes down. The $72 annual fee per residence is not proposed to be changed in this budget. The Public Safety Sales Tax Fund does not have a sunset. It is, right now, it's the funding source for our debt payments for the Justice Center, and those are ending at the end of 2027. Each year, it's accumulating some extra money that's not needed for the debt, as the sales tax has been pretty good the last few years. So if that continues on that pattern, then there might be capacity for some other public safety needs, facilities, maybe earlier than the 2027. There could be some bonding for something there.
Yeah, Mickey?
In regards to that, when the payoff is over, that money will go on forever for the police department and fire department.
It has no sunset legally,
Right.
so.
But it goes to them. So we're not underfunding the police department and the fire department.
Yeah, the ballot language provides for it to
Right.
be public safety. Yeah, and since it has no sunset, there's no way to change it. So. The Equipment and Facility Reserve Fund, that one is completely funded out of the general fund. A few years back, it was set up in order to provide a smooth funding source for facility equipment and technology, rather than trying to find money each year in the general fund. It follows, or uses the replacement schedule as a guide. It doesn't mean we're going to replace everything because it's come up for its year. If it doesn't need to be replaced, then we push it out. But it provides for a smooth funding source for that. And really, we feel like that is adequate, has been for a couple years. We've had a bubble in that fund, too, because of all the software projects. There's been just a lot of need to catch up in modernizing with software and fiber build-out. But that is showing in the forecast that can come down. The Debt Service Fund, each year we include our county car submittal that came to you a few weeks ago, and then any outstanding and forecasted debt that isn't programmed in other funds. We have some debt in the Economic Development Fund, and as I mentioned, Parks and Pipes, and then the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund. And then I mentioned the alluded to the early redemption of a bond issue. That will come to you Monday night. And it saves about $40,000. It's not a huge thing, but that will help out. Last year, we talked about the debt service fund having some future capacity after we plug in all of the things that are in the capital improvement fund. And this is very similar to what we had last year, about $7.5 million in 21 or 22, kind of depending what goes on between there. We had a lot of changes in this fund, but it kind of ended up coming out about the same as far as that goes. And then these are the city portions of these projects that are in the CIP fund. And this is pretty much taken right off of what you saw for the CIP, and that'll be coming to you for approval on Monday night as well. This is a table that we showed, I believe, maybe, I don't know, maybe the first time last year. We've been talking about these type of items, compiling lists of things that we are hoping to put in the budget in future years. And so this kind of shows divided into, I guess, categories. The blue ones are best practices, and then there's capital improvements, and then positions. And there's a sheet about each one of these in the packet that you got. And if they're crossed out, then that means that we have included them in the budget or forecast for the proposed budget. And the rest of these are not included.
Lisa?
So just to be clear, if you go back to that previous page, there are 2 projects that are listed for Ballantyne Road. And I know that we have some audience members that were interested in that project. That is not a funded project, and it's not a project that we currently have scheduled. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Eric?
Just a question on this one expenditure within the city manager's office for $10.3 million for City Hall remodel. We're going to get some more information on that, are we, as we go through the presentation. That number leaps out and smacks you right in the forehead. So
And it's not included in the budget.
I understand, but I'm just I'd like to know more about that.
We'll be kind of coming back in the fall with a kind of a facility discussion with not only the fire department and some of the public safety improvements, but their facility master plan as well, as we're in the middle of kind of a redesign discussion of City Hall. So.
Just to highlight new positions and then a couple of other things that are not positions. New positions: fire chief of operations, fire management analyst, fire logistics officer, police services tech or quartermaster, and an IT desktop support, which primarily supports public safety, body cameras, and other technology like that. Senior development engineer, Sean, and 2 Shawneetown employees with increase in hours. And then we added the comprehensive plan in 2020, a new revamp. And the land management software had a smaller placeholder last year, but not nearly enough to do the project. So this year it's fully funded. And I will say this about the land management software as well as the finance software. We're hoping that both of those projects will come in less than what we have budgeted.
Maureen, can I jump in quickly on a couple of those positions? And it might be more of a question for Chiefs Maddox and Mosier. I see in here we have, it looks like, 5 public safety positions, and none of those are sort of frontline officers or firefighters. To piggyback a little bit off what Mickey has said, we've heard over the last few months that we need more of those folks, and perhaps that's a community perception. So I wanted to check in with our chiefs and see if they felt like that was the case. I don't see them asking for more officers, so any thoughts on that would be great.
It's the only time I get to go first. John Maddox, Fire Chief. No, I would say we are very adequately staffed at the operations level, but we are very, very lacking in the administrative support of that, and that's what these positions will help to support.
Great, thank you.
I'm getting ready to go anyway.
Oh, all right.
I was just, are there any other questions about anything before this, before I turn it over to Chief Moser?
Okay, so it sounds like if they're for Rob, we can wait for him.
Okay.
Well, John ruined it. What I was going to say was so much for saving the best for last. Here I am, the first department to go. He came up and stole it. I've used that one before, but it was with previous council members, so I thought I could recycle it. So no laughter out here, though. First thing I want to do is recognize the police department command staff. At the police department is very much, as well as other departments too, I know, very much a team effort on formulating our budgets all the way down to the bureau commander level. So if I could ask everybody who's on the police department command staff, just please stand up. There you go. They didn't know that was coming. So thank you all very much. Jamie and Greg, also, you're part of the command staff. Our two civilian command staff, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for the applause too, because last week when you recognized the police department for the accreditation process, if I had known that was going to come out the way it had, I would have had every one of them sitting here with me. They deserve the huge amount of respect for that, especially Greg Collins, who's our accreditation manager. He deserves the lion's share of the credit on that. So thank you so much for the work there. Okay, we'll get going here. And I think I'll talk about a little bit what your question is as we go, and if not, we'll clarify as we go.
Thank you.
That's a list of our programs within the police department, grown throughout the years ever since we started identifying and defining programs several years ago. We've been fortunate to be able to add new things to continue to serve our community better. I'm just going to try and, instead of going through all these, because for the sake of time, I'm going to try and highlight at least one thing on each page. On this page, I'd like to talk about the niche police records management system. Our current records management system is 20 years old. It's a homegrown system built in Lotus Notes, very archaic. So while other agencies have been with other systems that were able to share information, we have not been able to do that for those past 20 years, ever since we went electronic with records management. So the opportunity came about 3 or 4 years ago to join a consortium with 16 other Johnson County agencies all of us to go to this new system with Niche as the vendor. And Niche has told us, while working with them, that they're very impressed with the collaboration here in Johnson County for sure. And they said that we are definitely the largest consortium that they have ever worked with worldwide. It's a worldwide company. So I'm very excited to be going to that. Captain Matt Sheshbein led us through that initiative, and August 5th is our target date to go live with that system. So it's no small undertaking. On this screen, I'd like to talk about the Ring Neighbors Portal. Captain Jim Baker led us through that one. If you remember, I think it was about 10 months, a year ago, a citizen came and asked if we were doing anything like he'd heard other cities were doing with that. And this was already in the works to look at how we were going to do this. This opportunity came up through Ring and the Neighbors Portal. And it's a system where, no, we cannot spy on what's going on there. It's not a deal where we look out there and see what's going on. It's very much a system where if we have an incident in a neighborhood, those citizens can voluntarily submit their data, videos to us to help as evidence to solve a case. It's worked about twice so far. We've gotten some good information to help us with cases. So it's definitely working. It's a free system, all that good stuff. On this, right, real quick, I'll say the radio placement. I believe it's the council's direction that we'll probably use the courthouse sales tax for that. Much more discussion will be coming on that as we go to the end of this year, maybe beginning of next year. Not sure exactly when that'll shake out, but again, that's something that is going on countywide. And then you saw the award of accreditation through CALIA. We received it 2 weeks ago. Greg Collins led us through it. Big deal. 5% of the 18,000 law enforcement agencies in this country are accredited. So factually speaking, right there to me, that puts us in the top 5%. And then if I'm going to be a little bit biased, I'll say that with our internal culture and our public trust, I believe we move up into the top 1%. So that's just me speaking as your chief. On this screen, Extra Duty Solutions is another program that we found while out at a conference and brought it back. And Doug Orban, who's retiring next month, said, I'll take that for my last project. I'll take that one on and get it implemented, which he did, completed it about a month ago. And so what that is, our officers have an opportunity to work off duty throughout the city at various places, town hall being one, civic center, school districts, things like that. And it's something that we allow the officers to do. There's policies, there's regulations, rules on how they do it and where they can work at. But we had been internally managing that system ourselves, and it was a lot of work for the people that do that, keeping track of that. Not going to hide it. They were probably doing it on time when they're supposed to be doing their primary duty, so a little bit of a conflict there. So we found this, and it would seem like a very good solution to have somebody else oversee that program for us. This is also a free service because this Extra Duty Solutions company passes their cost onto the off-duty employer. They throw a couple percentage in there to what they pay our officers, and they get paid directly from the off-duty employer. So completely free to administer our off-duty program. Has worked out well so far. Our budget highlights. Obviously, the highlight there would, for us would be that first bullet, and that's, I think, what we were going to talk about with the staffing. No doubt in my mind, the civilian position of a property quartermaster, it rose to the top as our number one need this year. We have one full-time position in our property room right now. I know that of all the agencies our size or bigger, we're the only ones with one person. And I know there's, I think, a couple other agencies in the county that are smaller than us that don't take in as much property that have more than one person. We just have not, year after year, we've looked and different priorities rise to the top, and it got to critical mass where we have to get this in there. A little bit of history. Over the past year to 18 months, we actually pulled some staffing from different places in the department where we could and diverted some extra energy into the property room to get it in shape for the accreditation process. I can probably speak pretty confidently that we would not have gotten that award of accreditation had we not gotten our property room up to where we got it to. And by that, I'm talking about the purging and things that we needed to do to get that in shape. So the assessors were very impressed with what we had going on in our property room, but we can't sustain that unless we get another employee in there full time helping out the person we already have in there. So that's why that's there. And then the quartermaster part of that, we're hoping that person can divert some time to the ordering of uniforms and equipment for all the new hires we've seen lately with the retirements that Maureen was talking about, the ongoing replacement of equipment and things like that. Right now, our training sergeant does that. And just like his title says, he's supposed to be doing training, overseeing the training for the department. He does that as well. But there's 118 people in the department, and that's very time intensive. And we'd like to get him back to diverting more time to train our folks on the low frequency, high risk type activities that they're high liability things for us. So our thought is try and see if this person here can take on the equipment quartermaster type stuff and get our training sergeant, especially with all the new employees. It's really critical that we continue to give them as much training as possible. So, so that's what rose to the top for our request this year. Any questions on that? Any questions online?
I just wanted to make sure we were covering. You don't feel like you need additional frontline officers at this point. You feel like you're fully staffed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're fully staffed within our allowed budget right now. I don't think any police chief would stand up here and say, no, if you're going to offer me more officers, I don't want them. No, nobody's going to do that. I would take more police officers anytime you all wanted to approve it and give it. That being said, we also recognize that to create a well-rounded community, all of our city departments complement each other with what we do. And so we understand that every year in the general fund, there's a certain piece of the pie that we get. And with our piece of the pie this year, that property position is what rose to the top.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, Lisa?
Very quick question. I did have a constituent ask recently whether you were planning on expanding your Ring program to include the Nest system for the doorbell cameras.
If you let me know who that resident is, I can reach out to them and let them know more to come. I can't speak competently on it right now.
Okay, thank you.
I wish I could, but Jason's saying, yeah, we think so. So, yeah. So we'll get with that person, though. Yeah, definitely. Anything else? Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. John Maddox, Fire Chief. So I'm going to speak to our side of it, and following Chief Moser's lead, I would like to invite my chief staff also to stand up. One of them's already standing back there in the back. They're the ones that really do all the work. I'm just the pretty face of the department. So here's our programs. If you remember in the past, we had a lot more programs. We took a hard look at this and we've consolidated some of those, and we've made them fit all into these 12 programs. We didn't quit doing anything that we did before, and as you can see also, we haven't added anything in a while. So a little bit about our functional department work plan. We actually had 5 goals this last year in our work plan. The first one being to perform, review, and update the city's LAOP. And if you remember, that's the Local Emergency Operation Plan. That was originally completed and brought to the council in 2014 when it was adopted. So its cycle is due for a review and to come back to the council. But I can tell you that currently Chief Epperson is working with all department representatives on our COOP plan. And that is the Continuity of Operation Plan, which is soon to be completed. He tells me, he's shaking his head yes. And then those representatives from those departments then will get to work on that review of the LAOP. So that is still our goal to get that completed. A lofty goal, but I know they're working hard on it. Second one in here is implement a long-term facility plan based on the recommendations from a commissioned fire facility master plan. We did kick that off last year when we contracted with an architect and contractor to work with us to put together a plan for some pricing and some conceptual design for our current and future needs. I can tell you that we've been working on this with every city department to find out what their needs are in our facilities as well. And so I actually have another meeting Friday. We're getting close to having something tangible that we can present to the council. And then the hopes is once the budget process is done this late this summer, early this fall, then I will have a proposal to bring to you with some options. We've gone through this whole thing saying we have to have options. We don't want to just bring one thing, and we don't want it to be a yes or no. We hope it's something for everybody. So I'll be bringing that back shortly. Facilitate the completion of 2 strategic goals from our department's strategic plan was also in our work plan. So as you know, we've been working through that 5-year plan, and just last fall, we were at about the halfway point. So we held some neighborhood meetings to bring everybody up to date on the status of where we were on that 5-year strategic plan. And I'm happy to say that we have completed 2 of those, or we feel that we've completed 2 of those. One of them was to improve our communication process within the organization. And a couple ways that we address that is we've created a meeting minute repository. So every group within the department that has meetings is required to make meeting minutes, and those minutes are posted in a repository within the department. So any member of the department can go in there at any time and read the minutes from everything from the chief staff to the water rescue team. So everybody's doing that. And then hopefully at some point you've read our newsletter. So we do newsletters. We made those quarterly. Turns out everybody thought I was writing everything in them. So I took credit for that and said, yeah, we don't have time for me to write all that. But actually it's all the chief staff contribute. Some of the special groups contribute. And I think it's just a little better newsletter quarterly now that we're doing, which helps that communication. Another part of that was the annual chief's address. I am happy to say it has been very well attended the last 2 years. We've actually held it in this room, and we've packed the house. I tell everybody the first year we did it, we had 2 members absent. One was getting married, one was having a baby, so they were excused. Last year, we only had 1 or 2 that weren't here, so it's been a great deal. It gives me a way to bring the whole department up to date in one room if they're not getting those minutes or if they're not reading the newsletter. So that's been a really good deal. Let's see. Of course, the other goal out of the strategic plan was to achieve accreditation, which we did in 2017. Next one was to facilitate the expansion of the Fire Prevention Division, which we did that with the hiring of the Fire Prevention Officer in January of this year, who is working out great. And then review and analyze administrative staffing recommendations And I'll move on to the next slide, and you will see the fruits of that. So you've already seen this from Maureen, the positions that we are asking for. Fire, it's actually a deputy or division chief of operations, a fire management analyst, and a logistics officer. That deputy chief of operations will be a member of the administrative staff, help guide and craft the strategic direction of the department's emergency response program. The fire management analyst, this person will manage multiple record systems and provide reporting solutions and data metrics analysis to help inform our department's decision makers, such as the chief staff, in an effort to improve all facets of our performance. And then the logistics manager, logistics officer, logistics manager, that's going to allow us to consolidate numerous logistical functions across the department. Functions such as gear, uniforms, apparatus, building maintenance, all right now are being performed by shift personnel, which, as you know, in a 24/7 business, that's tough to do when somebody works one day and then off 2 or 3. So those are the positions.
Eric.
Is there a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Chief, just curious on that last slide, more for clarification than for anything else. On these dollar amounts you've got for these various positions, I'm just making an assumption that that's salary plus benefits.
Correct, salary plus benefits.
This isn't just the salary, the benefits are not shown, so that's.
No, I was going to apply for one of these if it was just salary. No, this is salary and benefits. And if you noticed on Maureen's slide, there was a different number for the deputy chief of operations. That included a vehicle, which is not on this slide.
I did have kind of another question too, just on the fire logistics officer. I was wondering how busy this guy would be, a full-time person doing that. The thought kind of crossed my mind if that couldn't be a shared position between you and our police folks, having a logistics officer who would manage the logistics effort.
Right. So
Bring and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know why that couldn't happen and maybe fill 2 positions with one or something along those lines.
right. So we had that discussion last year with the police department. They have a part-time building maintenance person that said if he had more hours, he could use it at the police department. Didn't want to go full-time. And we've talked about it. And the problem is, I mean, the needs are different. Right now, we have 67,000 square foot under roof that's managed by myself and a captain on all the systems, building improvements. And this person would pick up 99% of that. Obviously, I still want to know when there's something wrong in the building, but we have 3 people manning, 3 shift personnel right now manages our uniforms and gear. We have 2 personnel, a captain and a firefighter that's managing, a captain and 2 firefighters managing our apparatus purchasing and maintenance program. I think we can keep a full-time person pretty busy, very busy. Program, we're pursuing a drone program. We've worked with PD. We have been fortunate to be able to use theirs. We're proposing a drone that will have a thermal imaging camera for day and night search, as well as a payload capacity that would allow, for instance, someone in floodwater, we could drop a buoy to them or tether a rope out to them. And then part of this program would be certifying of the pilots, which we currently already have 2 who did that on their own prior to this program that are both certified for day and night operations. And so we've looked into the legalities of that and how that would work, and it's a pretty smooth process for us. So replace engine 72, which is a scheduled replacement. So you've seen that for years. And then headsets, all our apparatus has headsets in them, and the poor guy that maintains those has pulled all of his hair out. He is totally bald, but he's done a really good job of keeping those working, but it is time to replace those. And this will allow us to replace all of them in the fleet for this amount of money. Any questions?
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Powell, Deputy City Manager. And for municipal court, I don't have anyone here from court to stand up, but our functional department work plan includes analyzing the cost to bring some of our old historic records back on site. Now that we're a paperless court, we have a lot of capacity in our old file room to bring some of those back from the caves where we pay to have them stored. So looking at that. And then also some of our budget highlights include an upgrade to our audio-visual system out at the courtroom, as well as upgrading our fingerprint machine, and then also embarking on a scanner replacement schedule to start adding replacement scanners to our system. And that's all I have for court.
All right. Thank you.
Good evening, Doug Whitaker, Public Works. And I'll have my staff stand had to come.
Yay.
I'd have one more, but he unfortunately had water in his basement, so he went home early. So he's been texting me. I've been keeping track of him. Start off here with our Public Works programs. Really, the only thing to just note here is we had the consolidation of development services into Public Works last year. So we picked up, when I say we, Public Works picked up right-of-way management, right-of-way acquisition, CIP management, engineering. So those groups, and when I say engineering, it'd be the capital improvement engineering, not the development services engineering. So those are just major changes from what we had in previous years. And then I'm going to do like Chief Moser, just kind of highlight some of the major projects. The one on this one I wanted to highlight is the street maintenance program. We're well into the sales tax that we have for the mill and overlay program. Really, the next step that we want to look at is what type of funding do we need if we set a pavement pavement level, service level of what we want. What are those dollars that would be required to maintain that going forward, as we would have to look in a few years. So that's kind of the major emphasis that we're putting on that program this year. As far as the mill and overlay goes, I think we've been doing well. And just a quick update, we're basically done west of 435 already, and they'll be cranking back up here on the east side in probably another 30 days. On here, we got, obviously, we're working on the Neiman Road project. And just continuing on that, we've got KCP&L out of the way now, and we can go to work, and we're starting at 55th Street and working south. Obviously, we start with stormwater, and it's easier to build stormwater when you don't have water. And right now, we got lots of water, so we're working on that. The other is the big project that's coming up in 2021 there, is Monticello Road. And obviously, we're starting the conversations with Southern Star to make sure we've got all of that under. And then, of course, working with HTNB, which is the design engineer. Obviously, these plans were built or designed 10 plus years ago. We're having to upgrade, obviously, some of them to the newer requirements for ADA and like that. Next item would be, on this page, would be the 6 bonded stormwater projects, the $8 million worth of stormwater projects we're doing this year. Blackfish and Hauser, that's gone out for bid. You've already approved the contract for that, so we'll be getting that one cranked up. Quivira Drive and Park and Widmer and Johnson are the other 2 major ones, because obviously they are on major arterials with failures, potential failures, and there'll be a lot of traffic disruption as we try to do those, and we're trying to get as much of that work done before school starts. It won't all get done, but we're trying to get a good start on it. Another one we have, obviously, the other 3 are Runner Road under Shawnee Mission Parkway, the cones that have been stuck in the inlets ever since I've been here for 3 years. We're going to take a look at that and get those repaired. 52nd and Woodland, And then the Seven Hills, there's some work over there on the lake, on the intake, on the pipes that come into the lake over there. And then we went through accreditation 4 years ago, and it's time to renew it. So that'll be towards the end of the year, so we will be working on that. They just come in and look at about 1/3 of your policies and like that. They send a team in and actually reaccredit you from that standpoint. So that'll be the major item there. Budget highlights. Basically, obviously the street, sidewalk, curb maintenance, that's the mill and overlay program that we do, plus would be some of the other projects that capital improvement will be doing, the CARS projects and those that are included with that. In 2020, actually 75th Street, and I know community development will mention more on the 75th Street project, but we've got that one will be going construction because we need to work through the PSP grant. That'll be in 2020, and then also Flum Road will be in 2020, which is in the capital improvement. The chip seal upgrade is where we're taking, we're, as part of that sales tax, we were to upgrade chip seal roads to asphalt, and that's those we select each year based on which one of the chip seal roads are in the worst shape. Snow and ice removal materials, the last 2 or 3 years, actually since I've been here, I haven't had to ask you for much money, but this year we burn up all the money or all the salt that we got, and actually our salt suppliers already said, hey, could we start bringing it, because we don't want everybody calling us in the fall, because there's, I think, a lot of us used a lot of salt obviously this year. Stormwater repair and lining, that's again, that's the standard, that's outside of the bond work that we do, and that's the 1.8 million that we do in pipe repair each year. Street sweeper, it's time to replace that. Again, there's two factors of that. One is obviously cleanliness to keep the streets clean. The other is, as part of your water quality and NPDES permit, is again, cleaning it so that the stuff isn't washing into the stormwater system. So that's, and street sweepers are unfortunately a high maintenance item, and they don't have a longevity, long life to them.
Mickey?
We're going to keep the old one for backup?
Yes. Yeah, we'll roll. We have two now. We have the new one and the old one. The old one will go away, and we'll slide them around.
Keep this one for backup.
Right.
Backup. Okay.
Right.
Lindsay?
I have a question about the Hilltop Crosswalk.
Yes.
When we first approved that, I recall the amount being about 100,000. But I'm wondering, is that 275 because it includes the sidewalk as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that would, and the traffic signal improvements, because obviously we got to have crosswalk lights and all of that down through there. And that would be a sidewalk from there up at Cap Fed all the way down around to the library.
Perfect. Thank you.
And so that, I think that's everything for me.
Jim, and then Eric.
One question, when on the street sweeper, are you keeping the chassis and just replacing the device on the back, or is this a whole new?
It's a whole new machine from that standpoint. I don't think, they're not really made to be pulled off and from the standpoint of the chassis and the equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question for you, Doug. I talked to Nolan about this briefly just in passing the other day about the CIP, and we've got this huge problem sitting in our lap right now with this need to upgrade our stormwater infrastructure, as you presented to us a few months ago, where we're short about 140, somewhere between 100 and 140 million dollars on getting all this work done. And it doesn't reflect anywhere in our CIP or anything like that. So it's just kind of this project sitting over here or something that's got to be addressed. And I'd like to think of a way that we could bring it into the CIP so that it becomes part of the overall deliberation process, and it becomes more visible in our deliberations and our analysis about where we got to go with the budget and what kind of money we're going to be needing to project out in the future. So I'd really like to see that somehow migrated into the CIP. I don't know if you could put it in there as one chunk, or whether it had to be in, pieces or whatever, based on the years, like, a tenth of it or whatever it is. But we need to start putting it in there and start addressing it, I think. So that's just a suggestion I have.
Well, a couple things on that. Doug actually prepared some information that we can pull up if you want to talk about the stormwater utility. As we also mentioned, there is some capacity in that 2021, 2022 currently. Of course, it is a few years away, but there's projected about a $7.5 million capacity in those years that we could use some of that debt service fund. And then we can also look at the stormwater utilities. Switch to.
Just a couple of slides that city manager had asked me to put together. This is the slide that I had shown you, whatever, our last presentation, I think the first part of April. Is right now we've identified, and again, this is through our ongoing video and all of that we do, is how we're rating our pipes, is there's about 224 that now have a 5 rating, which is the worst rating. Failure, we could expect it in the next 3 to 5 years. Again, sometimes it goes faster, sometimes it goes, not quite as fast. So, I mean, for us to just say it's going to fail, we can't, come up with that, but we just are highlighting that it's there. The estimated cost is, like I said, 11 to 14 million for those type pipes. Because again, we use an average of, it's about $450 a foot. Again, smaller pipes are less, bigger pipes can be more. So that's just an average for our system. Again, and if we look at the next 10 years, based on what we're seeing, that's where we came up with the 100 million there needed in the next 10 years. Now, just to give you, we did a little research. This is just right now, not every community around us has a stormwater utility fee. Right now, Lenexa, these are just some that I was able to pull. Lenexa's at $109 per year. And when I say ERU, that's an equivalent residential unit. So that's what we use for homes. So most homes, this is the fee, just like ours is 72 for a home. Obviously, commercial is based on the number of ERUs that their impervious surface is. Mission, they had some sort of, they're high, obviously, but this was when we looked at this even back in 16, this was their fee at that time. Olathe just increased theirs a little bit. I saw as I looked at their fees, they're up around 7 something, so it comes up to 86, 88. Overland Park, 2 things on that one so that you understand. Number one is when we reviewed it, they generate, obviously it's a larger city, so they can generate between $3 and $4 million off of the $33, but then they almost double that with transfers that come in from other accounts. So they don't just operate, they apparently bring them in from the general fund and like that as another funding source. So they work with about $8 million. Prairie Village is equivalent. They work about the same ERU as us, and then there's Shawnee. So those are the ones we just have, and those are just to give you an example of what's out there. Yes.
Lindsay.
Do you know why there's such a wide range? I feel like other numbers we look at comparing cities, it's not quite so. 336 down to 72. I know that 33 is an outlier, but why is it so all over the place in the same county?
The 336 is there was something that Mission did with a driveway, and I can't, maybe city manager members, and it was a strange. Yeah, strange one there. So that one is probably that one and the Overland Park one. 2 things. The other thing on Overland Park is Overland Park only has probably 6 to 8 miles of CMP pipe. They have over 400 miles of pipe, but it's mostly concrete. If I had the concrete, I wouldn't be standing here in front of you. That's, so again, it's based on what they have for their infrastructure, how many structures they have, which is your inlets and boxes and like that. So again, when they develop these numbers, it's based on what they, feel their need is. So it's can be all over the place.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. It's back over for Mr. Holman. There you go. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll take one. Oh,
She did.
she can do it for you.
All right. Neil Holman, Parks and Recreation Director. Good evening. Also, I've got Tanya Leck here with me, Deputy Parks and Recreation Director, and also the Tourism Award winner from last Thursday at the Chamber Luncheon. So, all right. Well, so these are our programs. We kind of go through them each year. There are 23 of them. And so this is what we kind of do with our time. So again, I'm going to go over like everyone else, just pull a few out. Trail Scout, okay, the two hub parks, NEMA now. So we have the two roadside improvements that we're starting to pick out all the elements on those, starting to approve them. And so you'll start seeing some activity down there. Trail Scout Park, wish I had some pictures. Charles Goslin has the James Butler partly done to the knees with his hat and everything. So he's partly getting there. And then we will, yeah. But if you drive by, the park's looking pretty good up there with all the rock. And we met up there last Friday. So it's coming along very well, very nicely. This one, the park facility infrastructure inventory. A lot of this will be done through the master plan. That's one of their elements that they're going to, as we go around, they're going to do an audit of each park. And so, again, want to thank you for letting us do the master plan, and also with Barbara Heller. So it's been a good. So far, it's been good, and we'll continue to be good. So this, with that. If you haven't been down to Shawnee Town, we've got the two buildings are looking great. O.W. Fisher and the Murphy Service Station, and the outsides are done. We've got, thank goodness, we did the sod last week, and then all the rain came, so we're getting ready for Old Shawnee days. So hopefully it doesn't rain then. But anyway, the outside of the buildings are looking good, and the insides are looking just as good. So. We've also, one of the things that we've wanted to do, we actually saw it at a conference as well, is this user-driven Parks and Recreation website. So there'll be a lot of pictures, and then there will also be a lot of video. So you can actually get in there, touch, click on, and then actually see more activity in the park. So it's just not, it's pictures, but there's also activity. So that will kind of bring the park to life a little bit more. And Kate's doing that. Again, the master plan, we had our kickoff last week. And again, thank you very much. And again, thank you for allowing us to also work with Barbara Heller. We've got, we'll have, and that all includes the needs assessment. We'll have public meetings. We'll have the park audit. And one thing that's nice about it, we're also doing a rec audit as well. So all of our programs, pricing, classes. And so it's the whole gamut in this master plan that we're very excited about. Another thing that we've wanted to do for a long time, I know Matt and Tanya have, is working on the special events. There's some special events that just the life of it's just gone. So to relook at those, to reevaluate each one of the events, and if it's still pertinent and if it still has life in it and it's still fun for everyone to go to, and the numbers are good. So they're doing kind of an audit on each event that we do. And also all the collections. I know the Shawnee Town staff is extremely busy with purchasing, getting collections for both of the new buildings. We're also working on electronic filing system, so going paperless. Isn't that nice? For the Civic Center operations, and then we'll be looking at also doing that at Shawnee Town as well on those. We have started Kate's kind of started and developed, along with some of the other departments, a communication letter that talks about programs, things that are just happening when people have vacation days off, just things that are going on in the department. But it's also tied to all the other departments, so it's nice that everyone can see what's going on. So here's our highlights. 55th and Belmont, the $4 million, that's a 45-acre park. That surrounds, almost 3 neighborhoods in that park out there. So it's kind of, we're 55th Johnson Drive, it's kind of Johnson Drive. But
Lindsay?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what that park will be like? Or Has the planning already started?
No, we will do RFQs, and then we'll have a public meeting and see what everybody wants. So that's what we do with all of those. Huh? Well, they are, because we're housing stuff, so those will be tore down here pretty soon. And you probably, if you've been out there, you're thinking, oh my gosh, what's all the dirt? I collect dirt, so it's there's always projects have free dirt, and I never say no to free dirt, so because you always need it. So it's better than having it on site than having to pay for it when you got the project. We did talk about the two employees for Shawneetown. They're already working. It's just a seasonal up to three quarters time, and then we're just adding 2 hours onto another person. With the increase of the collections, we have over 10,000 collections right now. And then we just keep adding with the two buildings and moving those around to make a nice, fresh look each year. So a lot of time, our school groups have just climbed from 3 years ago, it was 1,500, we're up to over 2,000, and now we're right at 3,000. And we have students come from St. Joseph, Missouri, which is, they travel from Warrensburg, so it's very nice. We're starting to really create a nice outdoor museum that people are really wanting to come to. Again, the master plan. So again, I can't thank you enough for that, being the first one. So that really will take us into the next 10 years of the master plan. Dr. Sullivan's, we found a house that's a 1929 house. It's a family owned, it's on a farm, it's 135th and Metcalf. To bring it here, it's a small house, but that's what Dr. Sullivan lived in. To bring it here to the site, so it'd have to be transported here. Everything's original on it. The renters they had renters, but no one was allowed to change anything. So it's hardwood floors. The kitchen is exactly the cabinets, everything is exactly the way it was. The windows, the gingerbread on the outside. So it's just, Charlie's very excited about this house. So there's a lot of money, but this includes the moving. So we're moving quite a ways from 135th and Metcalf. We're still looking at this to the site. This would be also a crawl space, so we'd have to build a crawl space. This is a sewer extension, water line, and this is also a teaching tool. So back then, when you went into, you were in town, well, you had running water, so you could turn on the faucet. And then we could have cooking classes. Within that, they had a gas stove. So then you walk to the farmstead, and that's a pump with a cistern, and you have a fireplace. So you look at different teaching techniques or cooking techniques, the way the water was, the way the kids really enjoy the experience. So that's why I think our group is our school groups have really climbed, and they continue to climb even with visitors from out of town that come. So we're very excited about that. That's it. Any questions? Yeah,
Jim.
Charlie.
Yeah, and I mentioned it too earlier today. In the past, we've got the thing like Erfurt Park, or when Erfurt Park was designed and built, it basically is a ditch section road. We've talked about building a temporary sidewalk to it, but it doesn't seem like until 75th Street is more or less redesigned. It's the only way you can get there is to drive. Now, as far as Belmont's concerned, as I understand, you've got trails from 3 different neighborhoods that will feed that. And then, but also on 55th Street, you indicated that there was going to be planning so that there will be walkways or something, so the bicycling and that. Mm-hmm. And then I'll get to the next one. Also, with the one proposal that just came in front of the Planning Commission, the Homeland Project, which is 43rd Street, which and this is way down beyond sometime when we're not here, but 10 years from now, if we have a 160 acre lake or 120 acre lake and that riverfront park there, and we go and we build hopefully the Homeland project goes through. But it just seems like that in these plans, we need to make sure that we are planning for the future to access the park and things, because that 43rd Street there would be one of the primary access points to it, unless you want to build out Clare Road, and then I think 43rd Street's better. Anyway, if you could just touch base.
55th and Belmont. It is a developed road. It's got sidewalks on the south, curb and gutter, all the way down it. So we would come in there with a parking lot, probably a rescue island, to get the kids across, go to the park. And then in the park, I don't know the names of the subdivisions as it goes over. I know the whole teams there's two of them, but it's kind of like a boot. So it hits 3 other subdivisions plus the ones across the street, which are 2. So and then Apache. So those will, there's almost like 6 subdivisions that will tie into to this one.
Okay.
Okay. We did meet. We met with engineering. Okay. 43rd Street going down to the river project. Yes, we are doing that now. We did look at. We sat down with engineering. We sat down with development services, planning. And I took the road to the bike board. It was an on-street, and with all the truck traffic that's going to be down there, really didn't want, if the bikes want to be on there, they can, but we want to put them on a multi-use trail that will go throughout that whole subdivision, then in the park, around the pond or the lake. So we have looked at all that. And so there'll be a stub as you come off where the lights are, as you come down, that when that road gets redone, when the development comes, the streets it's wide enough. There'll be a sidewalk on the south side and then a multi-use trail on the north side. And so that's set in the policy, or that will be part of the plan.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Stephanie Malmborg. I'm the Deputy Director of Community Development, and I'm filling in for Doug Allman tonight. So really quickly, as you know, Community Development has also gone through some staffing changes and reconfiguration with staff in the recent past. And so our department encompasses planning and codes administration, code enforcement, planning, development engineering, and all those services. We also have business licensing with us as well now, too. We have a great team down there, and these are some of the programs that we do. Everything from inspections, code enforcement, like I said, planning, some economic development, a lot of work with the downtown, and also working with grants. We also have oversight with our Board of Zoning Appeals, which handles variances, and the Planning Commission. Some of the projects that we're working on through this budget process are enhancing cross-departmental code enforcement. Code enforcement actually has a quarterly meeting with the police department, HR, various other leaders from other departments, and they're working on communication practices between them to share information to make sure that, if there's a problem property, our code enforcement officers know that maybe the police have a flag on that property to be extra careful when they approach the property, share information back and forth that way, and keep everyone safe while keeping the community looking nice. We're also working on looking to do a comprehensive plan update. If you've seen our comprehensive plan, you'll know that it's very text heavy, and we want to get more up to date with not only making it look fresh, but making it as accurate as possible and intertwining it with all of the other plans within the city. Hopefully also integrating what Neil's working on with the Parks Master Plan as well, and making sure all these plans speak to each other. We're also really excited about implementing some new land management software. We've actually gone through a process with a consultant to identify some really great software programs
And we've vetted them all, and we have selected a top software that we would like to have. So we're looking to get money in the budget to be able to implement that and hopefully start using that in 2020. So I'm sure you see a trend between all the different departments. We're all looking to kind of get with the times with some new software and make sure that we're operating as efficiently as we can and get rid of a lot of that paper that you see stacked throughout our hallways in different rooms and storage cabinets. So trying to get more digital with things. We're also looking to update our circulation and transit plan as well. We're looking to work on the process for land disturbance and erosion control. And I'm going to do a quick plug for our Reimagine 75th Street study. We're currently still taking surveys for that project. This is a project between Quivira and Schweitzer on 75th Street, and we'd like to hear from anyone and everyone on what you'd like to see for those street improvements. So hit our website up if you'd like to take that survey. We have it in English and Spanish, and we'll have that open until mid-June, I believe. So please take that survey if you haven't already. And we'll be using that survey input from our residents, businesses, and really anyone that would like to contribute that uses 75th to make a study and some results that will help us make improvements to 75th Street, as Doug talked about with the CIP plan. We are implementing a new building code, the 2018 IBC, which will go into effect in July. We actually got that all the way through the adoption process already, and we'll be consistent with other Johnson County cities by adopting that and having that implemented in July. We recently adopted some zoning text amendments for mixed uses in the Town Square District. So we're trying to integrate some new land uses and clarify regulations for the downtown area so we can reinvigorate some of the properties we see here in our downtown. It's very important to us planners down there and obviously the community as well. With all the focus on Neiman now, we're very excited for what those public improvements will bring to private reinvestment. We're also reviewing policy statement 29 for fees related to building permits. If you have any questions about that, we do have Tyler Worth here tonight. He's our chief building official. And so just making sure our fees are in line with the staff time that we spend reviewing those permits and comparing with other communities as well. Our highlights are the comprehensive plan. Again, going back to making sure that's up to date, easy to read, user-friendly, and consistent with other plans throughout the city. We want to increase funding for hoarder situations. And we have some various funding through different programs we have here, human services funding, community services, rebuilding together, minor home repair programs, different grants that we offer the community to enhance our properties throughout the city. Land management software, which I talked about, and increasing our senior development engineer to full-time from part-time. Do you have any questions?
Eric.
Just a question on the comprehensive plan. $200,000 to revise our comprehensive plan. We got a whole room full of planners down there. And, I'd really like to, we're outsourcing an awful lot of planning in this community because almost every time I turn around, we've got another $200,000 plan, $250,000 planning. And it's getting to be pretty darn expensive. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't be more wise perhaps to, because I know staff gets highly integrated in that planning process anyway. So it's not like you just hand it to some guy and he runs off and does it.
Absolutely
They're
not. Constantly,
trying to get input and all this stuff. So it's not staff time neutral at all. And so we're going to put a lot of staff time into this planning process. I wonder if we really want to get something done, perhaps even look at the possibility of a part-time person who can be the central point of focus to pull it all together and actually get it all into a document, like a temp hire or something like that. Maybe somebody that's already done this for a lifetime and they're really good at it, and they wouldn't mind picking up a few extra bucks, so they'd be willing to do this on a half a staff year or something like that to put a plan together. I think there may be some other creative solutions instead of just saying, here's another $200,000 to go do another plan. And it's getting almost alarming sometimes to see that many plans coming in. not the plans coming in, but we're just doing the master plan for the parks, and we're doing the strategic plan, and we got all these plans going on, and we're almost up to about $1 million in planning, so it's getting kind of expensive. And I would just like to see if we could do some innovative thought here and maybe come up with some solutions that wouldn't be nearly so expensive to get to the same objective.
Yeah, I mean, we can look at different options. I think in the past, I think this would actually be the first time, I think, since the late 80s.
It's been a long time. We revise it minimally, I think, every year, but it hasn't had a major overhaul and facelift, I would say, in quite a long time. But we definitely make sure that every couple of years we update the numbers, the demographics, anything important in the comprehensive plan.
And that's understood, Dawn. I understand that. But I think there may be some other options to do this rather than just, I mean, the easy solution is just hire some consultant to come in and do it, but are there other ways to skin the cat that we can save quite a bit of money on this planning we're doing? Because I like planning. Planning is good. I mean, I'm not saying planning is not good. I'm just saying there might be some other ways to address our planning needs and do a little more in-house and perhaps bring in some temporary staff to, pull it together, that kind of thing. I think maybe some things we could do. I mean, if it winds up costing us, instead of $200,000, it cost us $72,000 or something, that'd be a nice savings, really, for the taxpayers.
Just to clarify a little bit on the comprehensive plan, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Nolan, is the comprehensive plan will also involve some pretty lengthy citizen engagement as well, because the plan hasn't been updated in, as we've talked about, several decades. So I think it is a great opportunity to engage the public. And one of the things that I think we've all heard over the last couple of months is this conversation about who do we want to be as a community, and a comprehensive plan is a huge part of that. And it's what folks look at, certainly as they're thinking about whether or not they're going to move a business to the city. They want to know what our plan is as people are moving in. So I think it's really important that we get that comprehensive plan right. And I think that's a piece of it that I think is really important. And that's why it would be, I think, helpful to engage maybe somebody who's done that community piece of it before. I assume you agree. Silence.
We can, and that's really kind of the intent. I mean, we can look at other options for that and see if there's some opportunities. That's really kind of a budget placeholder.
Yeah, because I saw nothing in what I see nothing in what Councilwoman Meyer said that really impacts on what I said. I'm talking about perhaps hiring somebody that's on maybe not a full staff year. Maybe it takes a full staff year. Full staff year is less than $200,000. I can tell you that. And I was talking about hiring someone with some credentials. But these companies that do these plans, that's a business, and they do pretty well with that. They make a lot of money out here writing all these plans for everybody. And I think there are other ways of doing that much more effectively and much more cost efficiently. So I'm just asking for you guys to take a look at that.
Yeah, no, we can look at some different options.
I don't think that's out of the box whatsoever. So let's take a look.
Yeah, we can definitely look at some different options for that.
Thank you.
Stephen Powell, Deputy City Manager again, and I'll cover the City Manager's office. Some of the items on our work plan include developing a tree preservation ordinance, and Caitlin's currently working on the FCIP program. We're also continuing to look at purchasing the streetlights from KCPL. As we've talked about, there's a strategic plan has been kicked off, and we're gearing up for that project. We're also working on a citywide fee schedule. So while Tyler's going to look at his building permit fees, we'll be looking at all city fees as well and making sure that they're in line with other cities. And in human resources, continue to monitor, update, revise our personnel policies and manuals, and then also make sure that we're working with our departments to not only retain but also hire good employees to fill vacant and new positions. Julie is going to be looking at internal communication strategies, and we're also going to be working on a business survey as well as the next citizen survey. And then, as we mentioned earlier, there's been discussion to make some changes here at City Hall to increase operational efficiencies and customer service. And then Caitlin's also going to be looking at our fleet of vehicles to look at options for another solution for that. Some of our budget highlights include that citizen satisfaction survey. That's the survey that we do every 2 years. Also, we have money in elections for the mayoral primary as well as the special election we just had. And then we received a grant for City Right again this year. Over the past 3 to 4 years, we've received about $85,000 in grant funds for that program. I will answer any questions if there are any.
All right, thank you.
Maureen Rogers, Finance Director. These are our same programs that we've had, everything finance and payroll related. All of our work plan basically revolves around the new software, which is going very well. It's already well underway, and process improvements are already being identified and planned and mapped out. And related to accounts payable, budget. Then another thing that kind of also goes along with the software project but needs to be done anyway, we'll be working with the city manager's office to review and revise the purchasing manual. Not a lot different in our general fund budget. The new software is estimated to have annual support of about $50,000. We're already paying about $32,000 for Jim, so it's not that isn't an increase, all of it. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, Mel Bunting, Director of Information Technology, and I think we're in the home stretch, so let's get this done. This is the IT, the 9 programs that make up the IT programs or the infrastructure for the IT. This slide is software.
From a curiosity standpoint, what was the emergency preparedness part on this? Because I wasn't familiar with that, or maybe I just didn't understand what you mean by the emergency preparedness bullet on here.
So that's pretty much in the concept of COOP, disaster recovery, cyber threats, cyber breach. It's kind of all encompassing, but the focus is in IT. Disaster recovery, backups.
Is that the record keeping system and so on to recapture costs and that kind of stuff, or what is that exactly? I mean, I know if you get a disaster declaration, we want to recoup our costs, so we go to FEMA.
No. So this is solely focused on the IT and the infrastructure recovery of our IT.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Probably it could use it in a different wording because it has a different connotation and meaning in a broader brush. But yeah, this is all encompassing if we have a cyber threat or breach, different types of events, it's under that program. So, okay, this is coming back to this is software. As everybody knows, last week we replaced our Lotus Notes email system with Office 365, and so that was a big step in that. And then this is the IT public service announcement. Windows 7 is at end of life in January of 2020. So if you have a home computer running Windows 7, you may want to ask Santa Claus or your local friend to buy you a new home computer. Because Microsoft will not be patching that, and that will subject you to viruses, potentially breaches of security patches and things like that. So I'll conclude my public service announcement. So then this is hardware and networking. Replace our firewalls, which we've already moved this agenda item forward. It's been approved. We've already deployed the first firewall at City Hall. We will be migrating or implementing the next firewall at the Justice Center here in June. So that project is well underway. And then we continue to look at our fiber master plan and leverage opportunities as they present themselves as it relates to expanding our private network. And so this ties into some of these work plans tie into the building conversations that are happening. Today's desktop is not what we used 5 years ago, 10 years ago. The mobile devices, the mobility component. So we want to talk about how our communications works and how our desktops work with all the ergonomics now on the table. So we want to look at how office spaces are planned and laid out. VoIP phones, we've been using these devices since 2007 when we began deploying them here in the city. So they're roughly 12 years old. As well as we want to also provide security for our facilities through EDL. And then we also want to always be mindful of our security initiatives, making sure we're protecting the city's assets and cyber threats that come through the technology today. Budget highlights. We have a new IT desktop support position in 2020, as well as the funding for the hardware and software that we're currently going through, which is the firewalls, email replacement, and continue to expand on our fiber network. What is budgeted is a little over 6 miles of additional fiber. And again, that is planned, not committed. So. Any questions for IT?
Oh, yeah. Matt.
Thank you.
So Mel,
Mel, I think Matt had a question, sorry.
sorry.
That's all right.
Just a real quick question about software support. Maureen mentioned that they're getting a new software program, and so there's like a software subscription or a software support. I didn't hear anything about that. Reflecting on when we were talking about the land management software program, do we have anything in terms of software support as they do upgrades and patches and things like that? And is that something you manage for the departments, or how does that work?
Yes and no. So some of the
Good
departments, so some of the departments do budget for their own software and their annual subscriptions or maintenance. And then some of those applications are budgeted through the IT department. Kind of a rule of thumb is if it's enterprise, then it's usually in the IT budget. If it's an application that supports across the whole organization, then it's usually kind of rolled in like Lotus Notes or email. Those will be in the Microsoft renewals and subscriptions that we have. That'll be in the IT because it encompasses the whole enterprise. It's a lot of times the individual departments, if it's an application to their department, then they usually put that into their budget.
Right.
I was just going to say that I don't think we're quite far enough along with the cost gathering, I guess, on this product that they're looking at to have it separated into the maintenance piece of it. But there is plenty budgeted as a whole number to cover that until that shakes out.
Right. And are there any integrations between these different software packages across your enterprise that we may run afoul when we upgrade one software package, the integration breaks with another software package, or is there any concerns about that?
What we've tried to do is use best practices, which is leverage the API, which is an application programming interface, which is a correct way to develop integration between applications. And so as long as the upgrading product, as long as they keep their APIs constant, and we can leverage that integration.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This concludes kind of the department budget presentation. So if you guys have any other questions, and we've got the kind of our projected calendar and budget meeting timeline on the screen. So the next meeting, as I mentioned, is June 4th. We'll have the SCDC and Visit Shawnee presentations with Kevin Fern and Smith Tay will be here to present their information and essentially kind of that budget wrap up on June 4th. We have tentatively scheduled June 18th if needed, and then we will move to June 24th, which is the city council meeting where we will actually establish that budget limit, set the notice for public hearing, and then hold the public hearing on July 8th.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other discussion by the council? Okay. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this item? Yep. If you want to come up and if you'll state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Morris. I live at 10800 West 60th Street, Shawnee, Kansas. Boy, I remember these things, and they're not fun. I came tonight with a lot of people from Trail Springs neighborhood, mainly because we saw in the budget packet having to do with capital improvements programs, some maps that were pertaining to Valentine Road and the improvement from Johnson Drive to 61st Street, and then more. The one that we were concerned about was the proposed realignment of Valentine to meet up with Goddard. We understand that these are not funded, or probably won't be funded, but just the very fact that those maps are out there, there's no explanation that these are unfunded or whatever. It adversely affects the property values of those homes that could be taken out with that project. Doug Whitaker called me today. We had a great conversation, and he indicated that there's a process for requesting that project, as it shows in the map, be taken out of the CIP. We will probably be pursuing that, but I wanted you as a council to know that we're really concerned about the impact that has on those properties. It basically makes them unsellable at this point in time. That the best of my understanding was that was sort of a leftover from some old proposals. I think probably from the Gateway 2000 project, where there was discussion of taking out a whole bunch of homes in that area and then realigning it at that time. It's not appropriate at this time, and the neighborhood definitely does not want that. We would love to see Valentine improved, but I just wanted to make the council aware of our concern on that, and that we'll be pursuing that process.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, David. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak? Yes, ma'am, I think she was before you. If you'll come up and state your name and address for the record.
Tracy Thomas in Seven Hills, 13022 West 76 Terrace. Thank you, Kenny, for a great street. We are very grateful for that. Shawnee certainly hires nice people, the nicest of all the cities in Johnson County, and we've really appreciated that during this campaign that just ended at noon today. And so I'll mention kind of the dead elephant in the middle of the room. We didn't hear anything about what now about the Park and Rec Department. During the campaign, you'll notice that a lot of people really embraced our needs as opposed to our wants, and certainly supported the Public Works Department. And so one of the things I noticed was, if we're taking in $1.6 million a year from the tax for that, but we need within the next 3 to 5 years, 11 million, how do we get there? You know, are we spending enough money on stormwater? And so I didn't quite hear how we're solving that. I liked what Councilman Jenkins mentioned about planning and our priorities, that it feels like maybe there's a little disconnect. One of the messages from this election was, it was stated by Elaine Tatum and ETC that 48% of the people were not willing to pay any additional tax for it. And it actually turned out that it was 72% of the voters. I mean, we had a 46% voter turnout. That's record. And we are very grateful that you did the mail-in ballot. But it's like some of the conclusions by the people doing your planning are not matching up to what the citizens are trying to tell you. And and yet you want to spend 200,000 here, 200,000 there. She's in line to do your master plan and you do your next customer survey, and it's like, maybe you want to look at another vendor or look at the questions that are being asked, because maybe you're being fluffed. Maybe you're being told what you want to hear instead of what the public tried to tell you. You know, you spent maybe $500,000 getting ready for the vote on the Shawnee Community Center. You'll never get that money back from Dunn and the people who designed this thing that the people don't want. And yes, we're grateful you did the mail-in only ballot. Then you want to spend $480,000 moving a house from 135th up here. One of the lessons that we learned with the all-electric home is the county spent $240,000 moving the all-electric home down Metcalf to King Louis because they were too stubborn to take the darn roof off. And so they had to raise all the power lines, and they get to the north door of King Louis, and it's like, uh-oh, it doesn't fit in the hole. So they had to take the roof off anyway. So, you know, maybe look at some ways to save money, because $480,000, that's like a third of the tax that we could be spending on stormwater. So I appreciate all you're doing, and we need to move forward. But I didn't hear a thing about what are you going to do now. It was quite an eye-opener to have this election result today. So thank you.
Thank you. Sir, did you have a comment? Yeah, if you will come up and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Ken Bruning, 13248 West 56th Terrace. Hope to be back in it soon. It burned recently, but I'm still a Shawnee resident. I noticed when I came in what looked like a small reduction in the budget for both police and fire. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because it looked like that maybe I missaw it, but it looked like last year's was more than this year's. And if I'm correct, what I thought I saw, I just have to question the council if that's a trend we really want to be taking a serious look at. I'm a big proponent of public safety, so please, as I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we're actually decreasing funding to police and fire, I'd sure like to know why.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, Stephanie, are you pulling that up? I don't believe that's the case. I appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate that you drawing that to our attention, though. Yep. Just 1 second, sir. Let's find that, if you don't mind. We'll answer this question first. Yeah, so I think do you see yeah. Perfect. Yeah, you bet. Thank you. Yeah, no, trust me, I think we would all notice if that were the case, so thank you. Yep. All right, sir, if you want to come up and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Bill. Good evening. Bill McMurtry, 6121 Ballantyne, Shawnee, Kansas. Thank you, everyone, for seeing us tonight from Trail Springs. There's quite a bit of us here tonight. We had over 24 folks in my backyard the other evening talking about this. And I have about another 20 that wanted to be there for it. So, you know, we're looking at 45, and that's just the start. This whole possible improvement thing that's not been removed yet, it's devaluing our homes. It's devaluing our homes. It's making it near impossible to sell the homes for what they're actually worth. And that's just not right. Any way you slice it, it's just not right. We have folks that have been there a long time. We have folks that are new to the neighborhood. Nobody's in a hurry to get out anytime soon, I promise you that. We're more than a neighborhood. We're a community. Communities come together. Neighborhoods are just places you live. We come together as we did the other day. And it's pretty evident. And, you know, and I think Councilman Jenkins particularly, I've met with him, not personally, but when many of our homes were the sheds and exterior properties were burglarized this summer, and they took all the lawn equipment. Councilman Jenkins showed a personal interest in it, and he was there for us during our time, if you will. And I saw him tonight when he spoke up about, hey, we need priorities. I was like, yes, sir, we do. And we need priorities to get this off, whatever it is, the capital improvement listing, however it is you word it, you phrase it, we need it removed. It's the only way we're going to bring our values back up to what they're worth. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And thank you and David both all saying it sounds like you all have started conversation with Doug and the city towards that process of removing it. So I think we would all be amenable to that conversation. So thank you guys for coming. Yep. Sir, if you want to come up and state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Matt Leipel. I live in Trail Springs, 6100 Ballantine. I think we've hammered the point home about Ballantine, so I won't touch on that. But since I was here and overheard the rest of the budget, I thought I would bring up a couple of concerns. One, I noticed that there's roughly a 12% increase from 2018 to 2020 in the budget. Now, I know there were some budget carryovers from previous savings for projects that were added in. Cost of living is approximately 2% a year, and we're looking at much more than that. I don't know if that's typical or not, but it seems like a huge increase in budget for 2 to 3 years. I would encourage the council to look at that and see if that is following what's expected, if that's traditional or not. Second thing, as much as I like Shawneetown, it seems like it would be more cost effective to build a new house than make it look old, rather than spend $480,000 to move a house from Overland Park. What is that, 15 miles away? Maybe not quite, 10 miles away. You could probably, $480,000 would build a really nice house that all of the school kids could probably have a slumber party in. And I don't mean to be sarcastic, but is that really a good use of taxpayer money? $20,000 for hoarder situations? That seems like a private issue. I don't know. And $100,000 for a special election. I've got to ask myself how much of that was just spent on the community center mail-in ballot, and was that really, in addition to the other studies, we're looking at a considerable amount of money that was spent on a community center that I feel like we were probably misled by the consultant because they obviously made some money off of consulting with us. I think I've said my piece, so
Okay.
I appreciate
No,
I appreciate
thank you.
the opportunity.
I do want to
Thank you.
clarify the election cost. That's for the the primary and the general election for this coming year, correct? That wasn't the...
It was two, yeah, the mayoral primary
Yeah.
and the.
I think the
mail-in
community
ballot.
center mail ballot was included as a previous...
Yeah, we have 100,000 allocated for the mail-in ballot, but
Okay.
with the turnout, it'll be more than what Johnson County quoted us. We also have to pay for the mayoral primary, so this extra 100,000 covers all the extra costs.
Got it.
We always budget every year $50,000 for elections, so we're just adding an additional 50 this year to cover all of our costs for the primary and the special.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, sir, for your comments. Yep. Is there anyone else, sir? Yeah, if you'll come up and state your name and address for the record.
Ray Ehrlichman, 7510 Garnett Street here in Shawnee. Regarding this chart that's up on the screen right now, I just have two questions. Parks and Recreation budget 2019R is $7 million. And the 2020 proposed budget is 11.6. That's an increase of $4,500,000. I have two questions. Number one, is that increase of $4.5 million based on the possibility that the community center would have been approved? That's number one. I'm just asking. And number two, if that is where that $4.5 million is coming from, shouldn't that figure be revised? Those are the two questions.
Sure. I appreciate the question, Ray. Nolan, do you want to weigh in on that?
Maureen, to confirm, this is a functional budget. So looking at that is really for the Belmont part, the $4 million that they mentioned for the Belmont part.
Okay.
So it includes all funds.
All funds. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this item? All right. Seeing none. Again, this was for informational purposes only and no action is necessary. That also concludes our agenda. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, sorry, Eric.
Chief Maddox, could I see you for just a second after the meeting? Thank you.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned.